Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The Design Review Board public meeting of July 13, 2017 is now called to order. Please refrain from talking among yourselves during the meeting. Please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones at this time. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, on any of the applications that are scheduled for tonight, are asked to completely fill out one of the speaker cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. You will be asked to speak by the board when your case is called. Anyone who wishes to be renoticed about a project in the event of a return for redesign decision by the board must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent hearings. Current DRB agendas are available by visiting our website at www.glendaleca.gov. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and DRB appeal is available from staff. This will be roll call. Mr. Benlian.
Here.
Mr. Simonian.
Present.
Chairman Malikian.
Present.
The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on July 5th, 2017. We have one oral communication from staff, or do we want to, have we received any from the public, Mr. Chairman?
I have not.
Okay, we have one staff announcement, and that is the case, which is the last one on the agenda, PDR 1626334, located at 722 and 724 East Acacia Street, will be continued to a date certain, which will be August 10th. It will not be heard tonight, and this is due to a lack of quorum for this item. Again, the case at 722 through 724 East Acacia will not be heard tonight, but will instead be continued to August 10th due to a lack of quorum for this item. And there will be no further noticing for this item. Mr. Chairman, we have 3 cases on the agenda before you. The case has been continued, so it won't even be heard tonight. It'll be continued to August 10th, so no testimony will be received. Same time, starting at 5. Same time, same place.
Okay. Ms. Collin, should we continue, or are we ready for the next item?
Yes.
Are we ready?
I believe so.
Okay.
Good evening and thank you. This is case number PDR 1329554 for the project located at 510 through 512 West Doran in the R3050 moderate density residential zone. This is a proposal to relocate the existing historic single-family dwelling unit to the northeast portion of the 14,225 square foot project site and construct 3 new townhouse-style units around it. There will be a total of 4 residential units on the site with 7 parking spaces and private attached garages and 1 unenclosed guest parking space for a total of 8 that will be accessed from West Doran via a approximately 9-foot 3 wide driveway. The site was originally developed in 1910 with a 1,904 square foot, 1-story transitional craftsman style residence, which is going to be relocated. The relocation allows for the retention of the building and preservation of the historic home that maintains the character-defining features of the house. The rectangular shape and size of the lot is unique to the neighborhood, and it was one of the first residential developments on that block. An administrative exception was granted for this project to allow relocation of the house with a 20% reduction of the required street front setback and minimum interior setback. The approval was only for the relocated dwelling unit. The new units will comply with all the zoning standards, including setbacks, which at the street front will be 25 feet. By way of background on this project, the application was originally submitted in December 2013 and included construction of 4 new units and demolition of the existing house. The applicant submitted a historic structure evaluation prepared by Kaplan Chen Kaplan for the house, which found it ineligible for a designation at the local, state, or federal level and not a resource under CEQA. The city's historic preservation planner reviewed this evaluation and determined the existing house did meet criteria for listing on the Glendale Register and under CEQA would be considered a historic resource. Given this, the applicant revised the original proposal to retain the house in a modified form, which at that time involved demolition of the rear third of the house, relocating it on site, and incorporating it into the overall project. An initial study was prepared and circulated from October 27th, 2016 through November 18th, 2016 for a 20-day review and comment period. This project was last scheduled to be reviewed by the DRB on December 15th, 2016, but was taken off calendar based on public comments received right before the hearing. The previous proposal included demolition of 563 square feet from the rear of the house and relocation to the northeast portion of the property. The project has since been revised to include retention of the entire house and to address other comments received. Most notably, this includes a reduction in the overall height of the new construction and a reduction in the roof pitch, which helped address the massing concerns. Section 15073.5 of the CEQA guidelines states that recirculation of the MND is not required when mitigation measures are replaced with equal or more effective measures, and where new project revisions are added in response to written or verbal comments on the project's effects that are identified in the MND, which are not new avoidable significant effects. Both of these conditions exist with the current proposal for this project, and therefore no recirculation of the MND was required. The final MND has been revised to address changes made to the project based on those comments received, and this document was included in your packets. As detailed in the final MND, the applicant's proposal to relocate and rehab the home as mitigated will meet the Secretary of the Interior standards. The mitigation measures require the applicant to provide a detailed moving plan for the existing house. The plan must be prepared by a state-licensed house mover with proven historic structure experience. The mitigation measures also require the applicant to submit a detailed restoration plan for staff review and approval that must be prepared by a consultant that meets the Secretary of the Interior's professional qualification standards for historic architecture. The applicant's proposal as it relates to the existing house will retain the character-defining features of the transitional craftsman style. The floor plan and building footprint will remain the same, although in a different location on the project site. The existing hipped roof with the flared eaves, which is a key feature of the design and of the period of development, will also be maintained at the existing height and current roof pitch. The existing windows will be retained, including the bay windows along the east and west elevations as detailed on the plans. The only changes will be to the brick chimney, which will be restored to its original condition and feature brick throughout. And along the south elevation, there is a new window proposed. It's a 3-part window. Currently right now there is a kitchen door, 2 French doors with a transom above and a deck. That deck will be demolished, and that new window will be wood. It'll have hung windows on either side, and the middle window will be a fixed window with external grids at the top to match. It'll match or be similar to the windows along the front elevation. The project scope also includes construction of 3 new 2-story townhouse-style units with a style based on that of the historic house being retained. The new standalone unit on the southeast corner will be 2 bedrooms, 2,105 square feet in size. The 2 units along the west side of the property, they are attached to one another and feature 3 bedrooms and will be about 2,600 square feet in size. Each unit has a private patio area on the ground floor and second floor balconies. The location of the common open space area is at the rear of the lot and is accessible to all units. In terms of site planning, the relocated dwelling features a 20-foot street front setback as approved by the administrative exception, which is actually consistent with the predominant pattern on that block. The new development provides the code-required street front setback of 25 feet, and this also allows to provide visual deference for the historic house, so it'll stand out a little bit more from the new development. New drought-tolerant landscaping has been incorporated into the project. The location of new trees and the location of the planting is appropriately located on site. However, the succulent plant that's proposed for the ground cover doesn't really allow for adequate pedestrian circulation on the property. In addition, the landscape palette features succulents and other desert-like plants that are more typical to like a Spanish-style house. So staff has recommended conditions of approval that the landscape plan be revised to include more appropriate landscaping as it relates to the craftsman style, to include things that are more traditional of that style. In terms of mass and scale, the proposal appropriately breaks up the massing along the interior property lines by stepping the second story back from the first and cantilevering portions over the first floor, primarily over the parking garages. The units that face the street are designed as separate buildings rather than a single building frontage, which further diminishes the apparent size and scale of the new units. The surrounding neighborhood does consist of primarily multifamily development that range from 1 to 3 stories in height. The existing house being relocated on the property is 1 story with an overall height of 23 feet 7 inches with a roof pitch 6 and 12. This will be maintained with the proposal. The 3 new units are proposed to be 2 stories, and they feature an overall height of 24 feet 1 and a 4 and 12 roof pitch. Through the use of materials and detailing, the design of the new construction on the site is appropriate. The new windows are aluminum-clad wood, clear glass, single-hung, and recessed with wood sills and frames that match the detailing of the existing house. Horizontal hardyboard siding is proposed, and that will be consistent with the wood siding that's typical of the craftsman-style home. Staff has received comments related to this project. They are related to the historic nature of the existing house, the relocation, CEQA, and compatibility with the new construction. The comments have all been noted in the file and are part of the public record. Copies have also been provided to you. Staff does recommend that the DRB adopt the final MND for this project and approve the project with conditions as detailed in the staff report. That concludes my presentation, and we are available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff? Yes, we do.
Several questions for staff. The chimney that is being proposed to be returned to its original state, where it's going brick all the way up, was that the way the house was in 1910? It had the brick going all the way up, or was that kind of altered?
Original state's probably inaccurate since we've never seen a photo of the house from that period. What we're doing is basing it on the fact that the base of the chimney is brick. It appears to be older, and someone at some point changed the top part of the chimney, maybe after an earthquake, and it's stucco clad now. And the thought was to maintain the chimney as a presence, knowing that there was one there originally, and kind of create a relatively simple chimney form to recall whatever happened in 1910.
And the rear deck, was it original?
No.
It was not original. Okay. And do we have an existing site plan or an existing survey that depicts kind of the way the existing house is situated and how much of the east and west facades are actually visible at the moment context around it?
Brad, could you go to street view? The house is, well, we'll talk about this.
Sorry, I do have a site plan from, this is more so related to when they were proposing some demolition towards the rear, kind of just to give us an idea of what was going on, but this does include a survey of the property.
Great. And insofar as the moving process is concerned, the moving process of the existing home, it was mentioned that that was considered. Has some sort of a plan been put together, or is that typical for a plan to be put together, or is that something that's figured out more in the building and safety process?
No, we're one of the mitigations in the MND is that a moving plan be prepared by a licensed mover with experience moving historic structures. No building permits will be issued until we've reviewed that plan along with the restoration plan for the overall house. And once staff is satisfied that we're working with people who know how to move these houses, this is not, in terms of moving houses, any great mystery. This is a pretty simple structure to move.
No, that was my next question.
And so we are very comfortable we'll be able to find a contractor who does this. Houses are moved very often in Pasadena, Los Angeles. We just, we've had several historic houses in Glendale moved over the years, but nothing recently. So.
And this survey that was just provided, we could assume is accurate insofar as the east and west building footprints of the surrounding properties.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
And we have street view up to give you a quick visual.
And Jay, when you mentioned simple to move, what do you mean by that?
Well, simple is not the right word, but it's you can move huge buildings. You can move 6- and 8-story masonry buildings. You can do all sorts of things, moving buildings, and we've been doing that for hundreds of years. So moving a relatively small frame building in that context is a smaller project than a lot of others.
In terms of the structural state that the house is in right now, has anybody looked at that to make sure that?
Well, the moving company would look at that, and that would be part of their moving report. You have to make sure that the sill plate and the structural members at the base of the house are structurally sound before you put the beams under it to lift it up and jack it up on those beams. If those members aren't structurally sound, they would be replaced, or additional Dutchman or something would be put alongside them. But that would definitely be part of what we would review and what we'd expect the moving company to include in their report.
Yeah, I've worked on one before years ago, and these are the things that I wanted to make sure somebody's looking at.
Yeah, basically you're lifting it off the foundation, so whatever it's resting on has to have structural stability, and if there are problems, you can make it more stable.
And I guess because of the nature of the moving companies that do this all the time, if they do encounter any kind of problems during the moving or even the analysis period that would maybe hinder them to believe that it might, let's say, cause damage to the resource, what protocols are there for the city to be notified, or how does that work?
Well, I assume we would build that into the proposal. We can do it based on your suggestion. What I imagine would happen is they would investigate that before they lifted it up. I don't think anyone's lifting up a house before they know whether it's going to work, but of course surprises happen. As with any archaeological finds on sites, if something comes up, we stop work, we investigate, we figure out what we can do. So we'd have to handle that as it came. But I could put a conditional recommendation that we make sure that that's included in the kind of a contingency policy.
Okay.
So I have one final question. The 4'4" setback, is that something that it's based on? What setback is that?
That was the 20% deviation that they requested through the
So
AE.
that's based on the 20% deviation, and the 20% it would be 6-foot setback, and then it would
It's the 5-foot minimum, 8-foot average.
5'8", minimum, 5 and 8. So the 5-foot minimum would turn into a 4'4".
Yes.
I have one more question.
Thank you.
Mr.
Yes.
Chair, if I may. Jay, In terms of, I know initially they proposed, way back, they proposed 4 new units, and then this proposal came up, which just do 3 and preserve the house. Do you know, were you involved from that stage? Like, where did this recommendation come from? Was it like, did anybody meet with the Historic Society to come up with this? Was this like a suggestion by them, by the city? How did we arrive to this proposal?
Through working with the project team, knowing that it was coming to DRB, we recommended that the project team talk to the Historical Society. I don't know if that ever happened, but we often recommend that, and applicants choose whether or not to do that.
So we'll ask the same
you can ask
question
the
to the
applicant.
applicant.
Hopefully my memory is correct about that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Rodney Khan?
Good evening, Chairman, board members, and city staff. My name is Rodney Khan. My offices are located on Brand Boulevard here in the city of Glendale. As staff mentioned, we started working on this project back in 2013, so it's been about 4 years. And we did start off looking at demolishing the existing building. And then there were quite a number of alternatives that we looked at as well. One was keeping a portion of the house and relocating it, and then ultimately to where we're at today, which is keeping the entire house intact. But that was not the only thing we needed to do. We actually completely redesigned our project, because once we were keeping this historic structure, we redesigned our project to complement it, because we didn't want to compete with it, rather complement it. We respected it, the detailing, and the detailing that we do and have in the additional units are by design and purposeful. If you've been out to this neighborhood, there's a real mix of architectural styles in the area. And quite frankly, most of those styles we would not want to duplicate or replicate. Many of those structures were built in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s when design preferences were very different. Our project design is simple, and it's simple by design. And we think it's elegant, and we think it respects the existing house that we are maintaining. Staff already mentioned that we have a total of 4 units. It's a large site. It's a 14,000 plus square foot site, but it is in the R3050 zone. So what we ended up doing was we relocated the existing house. We set back, detached and away from that structure, the unit to the rear. Then we have our driveway, which kind of bisects the site. And then we have a duplex to the west of that. We also changed, because of the location of the driveway, we tried to narrow the driveway so that more landscaping would exist on the front of the site. Right now, if you've had a chance to go out there, there's a large circular concrete driveway which takes up a large portion of the front of the lot. Overall, we think this is a modest project. We incorporated with staff some very usable open space, private open space for each of the units, but also a large common open space on the rear. If you've noticed that on our lot, we actually have an additional piece to the south of it as well. That area also is part of our open space and is beneficial to the overall project. There was a question about the relocation consultant. We have already, about a year ago, spoken to a contractor that specializes just in doing this. And as mentioned, we provided some information to the city staff. They've relocated homes all over Southern California, Pasadena, Los Angeles, West Hollywood, etc. So these are very experienced consultants, contractors that do this work. We've had a chance to look at the mitigation measures in detail as we've discussed them with staff, along with the conditions of approval. We understand them, and we completely will fulfill and agree to comply with all of them. That concludes my portion of the presentation. If you have questions of me, I'd be happy to answer them. Our architect and our property owner is here as well, and they will be speaking. So if you have questions of me now, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
I have some questions.
Yes,
Sure.
please.
So what was the process in terms of the discussion with the Historic Society throughout the process?
Sure. So what we did was, back in 2013, we submitted our application for design review. And at that time, we were told you need to perform a historic assessment of the house. The historic assessment came back and said that the house was not significant. That's what our consultant provided, that report, and we provided that to the city. In our thought process, we thought that was it, that we were going to move forward with our project. We were going to demolish the unit and build a 4-unit project. So there was no conversation, there was no contact, there was no nothing. It was, we thought we fulfilled that obligation. We met with city staff. City staff reviewed that report. They come back to us and they said, we don't necessarily agree with this report. We want some additional information. So we went back to our consultant that did the work to perform that and get additional information. We provided that to staff again. Our interaction during this whole process has been through the city staff. So any feedback we've gotten, any letters that have been sent or received, we filter through, we go through the city staff to get them. So that's been from day one to today.
So after city staff had informed you that, yes, this fits to be on the Glendale registry, you guys didn't reach out to the historic?
No, we did not.
Okay. And my last question is, the place where you're relocating this house, the visibility from the street, what are we looking at? What size of it is going to be visible from the street?
The north, well,
Is it to
the
the
north,
same extent that it's visible right now, or is it
well,
changing?
I don't think it could be to the same extent that it's visible because there's other buildings and structures now. But is it predominantly visible? Yes. It's on the front. It's highlighted. It's stepped forward. And the other structures are respecting it and pushed back to it. So it will be very visible.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Do we have any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, where's Sara? Oh, Sara Netivot.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sara Netivot, and I am the owner of this project. I just want to make a quick statement in support of the project. We have been working diligently and meticulously over the past 4 years on this project. We've been very flexible. Our intent is to comply with the concerns, requirements, and requests of the City of Glendale, its interested parties, and the community. We have altered and modified plans throughout the process, and the currently proposed project is one that respects the historical value and character of the existing project, at the same time adds value to the site, the community, and we have time and time again gone back to the city and worked in cooperation with your requirements. So we hope that you can appreciate the compromises that have been made with the current project and appreciate the modesty of the proposal. Anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Soria?
Good afternoon. My name is Verish Soroyan. I'm the architect of record. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
I have a couple, but I'll wait for you guys.
Since I don't have a material board up here, it might be somewhere with staff. The existing windows of the significant house, is it all going to be, what material is the windows going to be in the existing house that's being?
I think Vista mentioned that, what kind of windows we have proposed for that.
I'm sorry, for the existing house?
Yes.
The existing house, most of them are the wood windows that will be retained. They'll be repaired as needed.
Okay.
To match what's there, and then the new construction will have aluminum clad wood windows to give the same look.
Well, aluminum clad is aluminum outside, wood is inside, so you don't see wood.
No, but you have the proportions of wood windows, and that was our goal.
Okay.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
cool.
And so the idea is to refinish and refurbish the existing windows?
Yes.
Okay, good. The other question I had, just south of the guest parking area,
Yes,
is that the enclosed trash area?
yes.
And how do you access that?
Well, there's a parking, and next to the parking, there's a loading and unloading area for ADA. That 8-foot wide, it's always accessible and available. That will be used to carry the trash.
Okay, and then there just seems to be a gate on the south, on the next to that ADA
Yes.
area. So is there going to be some sort of a gate divider there as proposed, or is it going to be open?
The fence.
It's a fence. And so are these individual trash bins, or are they the bins?
No, it's 4-unit, based on a 4-unit, that one trash bin and one recycle bin will be there.
Okay.
Not the small ones.
Okay, so one comment I had is you would probably want to look at how those bins are accessed by the service company, because they're going to have to pull them out onto the curb. So how do you get that, and how does it go past the fence? I was wondering about that.
Well, usually they can have the clicker to open the gate,
Uh-huh.
and they can access there, and then they can open the trash enclosure gate and take it out, and vice versa.
Okay. No, but the question I had is this a fence over here?
That's a removable gate. I mean, it's not shown very clearly, but it can be removed. I mean, or slided.
Okay, so that would make
Yes.
sense. If it slides over, then you have
Yes,
access.
exactly, yes.
And then these are on grade, or are these raised plants?
Everything is on grade.
On
because
grade. I
that is
realize,
dirt.
but is there raised?
8 inches probably.
I see. Okay, so they're gonna bring it this way, try to swing it. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Sorian, if you can wait for a second. Yep.
Yes.
Oh, question. What is this? Is that?
That's an accent curb only.
Okay, so it's
At the finish.
okay, and then
material
it says
level.
that this bedroom and this bedroom is going to be basically the entire backup for this is this entire thing?
Yes.
Okay.
All the way to the wall. It
All the
can
way
be
to the
used
wall.
as backup.
So this bump out, it's okay.
Well, it's 24 feet.
24. Okay. I had another question. Completely forgot. The colors that you've chosen, I don't have a material board, but the style. Can you explain a little bit of the style that you have chosen?
Well, we were scrutinized by the design studio, and we have complied with all their requirements that how the overall style of the new duplex and the rear house versus the existing building and how to match it. That's what we did actually, to not to copy, but to be in conformance with whatever it's there as an existing single-family house.
Okay.
Compliment.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you talk about the difference between this proposal and the previous proposal? You guys were proposing to remove portion of that existing house.
Well, as far as I can recall, the rear, some 30 or so percentage of the house, both sides we agreed that we can demolish that and then keep the front portion, about 60 or 65% of it, and then sort of mimic the rear facade at that level, at that plane.
Okay, and why did it change in this proposal?
Well, there was opposition from the Historical Society or so, and then the whole thing, we had a design review board, a scheduled design review board, which it didn't happen, and then eventually we came to this.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one more question. There's, and it's a combination of question for you and staff. So, and this is for my knowledge and for public. 4 units on a lot triggers a guest parking?
That's correct. It's a quarter space per unit.
And the existing structure, the historic structure, does not have a parking, correct?
Correct.
Now, by relocating that, even though technically we're not adding or changing, we're basically taking it. We're going to assume that it's the same exact house in a different location. So, is it still considered a 4-unit? Therefore, you need to provide the guest parking, because technically they're adding 3 units.
Mm-hmm. But the project site will have 4 units.
Even though the existing structure did not have one.
Correct. So while they don't have to park the existing house because they're not adding square footage or bedrooms, they do have to provide the guest parking space.
Okay. And then the question that it's directed to you is, what is that middle single unit parking? Is that, because I don't have a second floor plan, so I don't.
Well, the duplex, the 2 unit.
Oh, there it is. Okay. So
It's
yeah,
all 3-bedroom
it's
on the duplex side, and that will require, each unit will require 2 1/2 parking. So that additional parking is the parking in the middle of the 2 garages. It's required by code.
And the 3 units require guest. The 2 that it's there, the duplex. When you say duplex, it's 2 units, right?
Yes, the attached 2 units. Yes.
2.5.
2.5 and 2.5.
2.5. That makes 5.
Yes.
Therefore, and then and you're not going to count the guest parking as part of the guest parking is the handicap parking, basically, you're providing.
Guest parking is the guest parking, but since it's the only guest parking, it's been labeled as AD access parking, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Bruce, Merritt. And you are? You can. Please state your name.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Yerk, and I'm here on behalf of the Glendale Historical Society. I'm not here because we believe that all old buildings are historic or that Glendale should be frozen in time. I'm here because we agree with the city that this craftsman is a historic resource. And despite that, we have supported relocating it on site to allow for development. We're happy the house is staying intact, but for over a year, we've argued that there are problems with the size, scale, and proximity of new construction, as well as with the city's handling of the project. We work with an attorney who specializes in CEQA as it relates to historic resources, and she has no doubts that an EIR is required. The city isn't really having sufficient oversight. As you've heard, there's no moving plan, no conditions assessment, no determination of feasibility, or what it means for character-defining features to be retained to the greatest extent possible. Unless we know what that means, we don't know whether they're going to be retained or not. Thus, the MND cannot demonstrate that project impacts would be reduced to a less than significant level. The city also cites economic feasibility to justify the project, but CEQA forbids this in an MND. Lastly, 2 experts have rendered their opinion that the size, scale, and proximity of new construction would have a substantial adverse impact on the historic resource. The fair argument standard applies, and preparation of a focused EIR is required. All of this is laid out in the comment letter. Virtually every comment letter we write is primarily about the city's failure to follow a proper process. The belated preparation of the MND was the city's acknowledgement that its process was flawed. They've had 6 months since the last postponed hearing to get a moving plan and a conditions assessment in place, but they haven't done it. The city is cutting corners when it comes to environmental review, and I know they're understaffed, but it's not going to stop unless you make them. And the situation wastes your time, it wastes the developer's time. For the reasons we've stated, you should not certify the MND. We ask that you please not approve this project, but instead require preparation of a focused EIR. Or better yet, you can ask the city to fix the MND and send the project back for a redesign to ensure that the new development is thoughtful, sensitive to the resource, and at the appropriate scale. The City of Glendale is not sentimental about its craftsmen. In 2 weeks, you'll be asked to approve a project involving the demolition of 2 craftsman houses on the same block of Salem Street, where 3 other craftsmen were earlier approved for demolition. On that same block, 6 craftsman buildings were demolished in 2016. That's 11 on one block. Glendale has decided that the craftsman at 512 West Doran is special, that it is rare and historic. Cramming it into a corner and crowding it with out-of-scale 2-story buildings is not the treatment that a rare historic building deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I go to the next speaker, I would like to ask the staff if they can comment on, there's a lot of allegations and statements stated now. So.
In reference to the crowding of the resource, and that's their sole purpose and reason why they believe an EIR is required for the project, in that there's still a significant impact based on the letters that they submitted and that dispute amongst experts, fair argument standard. We don't believe that that has been reached because the resource itself would still be eligible under the state's local register, even with the buildings in the proximity that they're there. So that's still going to be an eligible resource. Therefore, it wouldn't result in an unavoidable impact under CEQA. The issue with the mitigation measures, they're not going to be able to pull a building permit or anything else until we're satisfied with the moving plan and the plan that's going to have them identify all the character defining features, which ones need to be preserved as part of that, and that sort of thing. And there's actually CEQA case law that would allude to the fact that that's not deferred mitigation. So that's actually in a response from their previous letter, and that was in response to their comment on 1-6, and the previous letter is included in the final mitigated neg deck. So we don't believe that there is any issue with deferred mitigation. No permits will be issued until those mitigation measures are satisfied. If it gets to the point where those mitigation measures can't be met, then that would be new evidence that we would then have to proceed with additional environmental review at that point.
And so, what happens at that point?
Then we would have to recirculate any kind of environmental review based on whatever findings we find in terms of. So
if in case we do approve this and the MND, and if that at that point staff decides that there needs to be an EIR, would that come back to us and nullify our approval if there was any approval today?
It would have to come back to you guys. Like for instance, if they decide that through their moving plan and everything else that house can't be retained based on some structural integrity of the building, then they would have to come back to us because now the project has changed in terms of whether or not they're going to preserve that resource or not. So we would have to reevaluate that impact, and they would not be able to proceed without further environmental review.
And knowing so many different issues, what do you foresee that may cause that, other than not being able to retain or moving the structure it's going to impact or it's going to?
If with those plans that come out, if it's determined that the resource would lose its historic integrity and could no longer be listed, then at that point we would have to reevaluate.
Thank you. Is it Francesca Smith? Oh, Francesca. Sorry.
Hello. My name's Francesca Smith. I have some handouts, and I would ask that I could have 1 additional minute with your indulgence. So I will start as you all start your drinks and start looking at these. Good evening. My name is Francesca Smith. I'm a member of the Board of Directors of the Glendale Historical Society and have been a practicing professionally qualified architectural historian for more than 30 years. During my career, I have worked on numerous successful relocations. I have reviewed unsuccessful relocations. Some of my successful projects have been the Sam and Alfreda Maloof residence, as well as projects at a California mission campus of USC. I worked on a Green and Green in Pasadena that was not very successful, but I didn't have a big role in that. All but one of these properties retained National Register eligibility, and even one was listed after it was relocated, which is rare. Unfortunately, since I only have 3 minutes, I'm going to be quick. Handout 1 that you have demonstrates on 2 sides how much the historic property and its building and its property would be altered by the proposed project. Its setting would change from a wide lawn with mature trees and ample open space to being squeezed onto the front corner of the lot, crowded by not very imaginative, but nonetheless large and tall buildings that would visually overtake the simple building. I guess you can see that it's different when you see it side by side compared with the existing plan and also the photographs, the rendering and the photograph side by side. Handout 2 contains the universally recognized principles of relocation for historic properties. They haven't been mentioned in any staff reports. This is John Obed Curtis's book from 1979, which contains basic concepts. One is how the building would be moved, which is at this point a mystery. It could be chopped in half, it could be dismantled and put back. We have no idea how it's going to be moved. Whether its setting would be entirely destroyed, which it would be here, how the building would fit in with the new buildings and vice versa, which I believe they do not. Whether the setbacks would change. As you know, they would change greatly. In one of the handouts, there is a numerical comparison of the dimensions. As you can see, there are even percentages of increases and decreases. You'll see that it's significant. A basic in architecture that I know you all are aware of is when you're evaluating how a new project fits in with an existing historic building is the alignment of floor plates and the alignment of cornices. The new building should be subordinate. I don't think you see that here. You see the floor plates just do what they want, the cornices are wherever, and the building is taller. I don't know if my 3 minutes are over.
I'll give you 30 more seconds.
Thank you so much. None of these things jibe, except in rare cases. The relationship between a property and its historic associations are destroyed when the building is relocated. The basics of integrity include location, setting, and feeling. Each of these 3 would be destroyed by this. The third in your mini packet is the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. I know you all have to work with these sometimes. There's a big difference between reading them through and thinking, yeah, I sort of get it, and applying it to a project that receives a great deal of scrutiny. In this case, things like removing the windows to move it, how is that going to work? They're 107 years old. That's what's in the plans. So some glazier is going to take out these huge 107-year-old 3-part windows, package them up, isn't going to work, and put them back in. And the answer will be we couldn't reuse them, so here are your new windows. So you end up with sort of a replica.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we have an adverse impact under CEQA. I have lots more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Bruce Merritt.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Bruce Merritt. I'm also a member of the board of the Historical Society. The fact that there are 3 of us here this evening, I think, indicates the extent to which the Historical Society feels this house is a valuable historic resource that needs to be protected by the city and is not being protected. there just simply is not enough time, even with three of us having 3 minutes each, 4 minutes each, we could speak for 20 minutes to talk about all of the procedural problems with this application. I can only ask you to read the material we've submitted and think about it long and hard. There's some serious, absolutely unsurmountable legal obstacles. And I speak as a former lawyer. I'm now retired. I've let other people carry the water on that because I am retired. But I haven't lost the ability to read a statute or read the regulations, and I know that they're not being complied with here. I would rather spend my time, my last remaining 2 minutes, whatever it is, giving you a slightly different angle on this. Since I retired, I've become a bit of a historian. I've spent a lot of time.
You need to speak into them.
I've spent a lot of time thinking about early Glendale history. I've looked at a lot of early photographs of early Glendale. This house really is a history lesson. It really is a glimpse into Glendale's past. If you go back, if you look at early photos of Glendale, 1900, 1910, when Glendale was still mostly a farming community, houses like this were sprinkled all over the valley. Many of them, most of them, are long gone. There are very few of them that are still remain. Ones like this one in particular, in the context in which they have stood for 100 years, are almost non-existent. The CEQA protects not only the fabric of the house, it protects the setting, it protects the visual impact that one gets in looking at the house. The city says the difference between this, which was basically a farmhouse sitting in a certain amount of open space, and this, which is the front of an apartment building jammed in a corner with a two-story building towering over it, like a couple of linebackers towering over a short referee, that is a slight alteration. Well, words have meaning, and this is not Alice in Wonderland where words mean what we want them to mean. The word slight is not by any means what's happening here. This is a substantial, material, massive change in the way that house looks versus what it's going to look if this thing is approved. They could paint this house magenta, and people driving down the street wouldn't notice it if this project is approved. Whereas now, if you go by that street, and I've done it dozens of times, and you look at that house, you see a bit of early Glendale. You get a glimpse of the past there. You get a history lesson. And that history lesson is going to be lost if this project is approved. This project could be designed in a way that would make this the crown jewel, that would accentuate its historic value rather than demeaning it and reducing it the way they've done it. We have been able to persuade the city. You people are in a position to make the developer do the right thing in this. I would ask that you do it.
We heard you. Thank you. Mr. Khan? To be fair, I will give you 30 more seconds.
Thank you. A couple items. First, I think it's very clear that city staff did a very thorough job examining this. And quite frankly, they acted very cautiously. And as it relates to CEQA, we were scheduled multiple times to be heard by this body, and we were pulled off the agenda. Why? They wanted to do more analysis. They wanted to consult with the city attorney's office. They wanted to discuss CEQA. This is not a knee-jerk reaction. This is something that has been thought out and that has been analyzed completely by a qualified city staff. In terms of the relocation of the house, I mentioned in my original presentation, we have a contractor, a consultant, a contractor that does nothing but specializes in this. That's who we're using. We're not using someone that does this on the side or that thinks this is a good idea to make some money off of. This is a person, a company that does nothing but this. They are qualified. They will provide a detailed plan that your qualified city staff will review. If it's not adequate, the same thing that's been happening to us over the last few years, they're not going to accept. We're at a point where we've done everything in our power to respect this house. We've completely redesigned our project. We've maintained the entire existing structure. This is a very small, modest project, as I've stated. I could not think of anything more that we could do as a team. This has been 4+ years. We ask that you recognize that and you look at what we are proposing. I'll conclude my remarks on that, and we thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much.
I had one question.
We do have one question for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Some of the renderings and pictures as depicted seem to show that the roof line has decreased of this existing house that's being relocated. Is that graphics? I assume that's graphics. I assume the roof is not being touched upon.
Commissioner Simonian, Board Member Simonian, it is graphics. The existing house is going to remain exactly as is, except for the minor modifications on the south side that was highlighted by staff.
And insofar as the windows are concerned, a comment was brought up that the windows would be somehow taken out during the relocation. Is that the case, or is that kind of being worked out with the consultant that would suggest the best way to move them? Because I would imagine if you take them out, putting them in might cause a lot of hardship and would basically render the windows useless.
Right. Board Member Simonian, we will do exactly what this experienced expert contractor tells us to do. We would not go off on our own and do anything. If it's whatever his recommendations are and that staff agrees with is exactly what we're going to do.
If I could clarify quickly about the window schedule in the applicant's material package says that the windows will be removed, sanded, restored, and reinstalled. That was the idea of just a generic kind of restoration. We didn't ask for that specifically, but that's talking about the restoration, not the moving necessarily. There would be absolutely no reason to remove the windows for the move unless the consultant for some reason thought that was important, but generally you wouldn't do that.
I see. Okay.
You might board the windows up. You might do other protective means to make sure the glass isn't breaking and other things, but you wouldn't have to take them out.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
The public session is closed. Who would like to start first? Simonian?
Wanted to thank everyone for coming out. I know it's difficult when everyone comes out and sits through these hearings, and I do remember this case being pulled off several times, and I know this has been something that's been going on for a long time. And I echo what Mr. Khan said, is in that when a case is pulled off the agenda last minute, it usually deals with staff, city attorney, and others dotting the I's and crossing the T's and really examining last-minute comments that are made by, in this case, the Historic Society or concerned community folks. And so when that occurs, you could tell that something has come up that's beyond the normal, and it requires further thought. And so this is a project that's gone back and forth, and I'm glad it's finally here, just because, to be on the fair side with everybody else, you want some finality. You want things to move along. You don't want them to stay in the purgatory of analysis for forever. I'm going to kind of holistically look at this as far as what my approach is and what my thoughts are, and then we can kind of get into the specifics later, perhaps, after everyone speaks if necessary. Insofar as the historic nature of the house, insofar as CEQA matters as it pertains to moving the house, etc., I'm going to defer to staff, just because we've always done that, and I've always done that personally, is because I think we have qualified staff that are experts at this field. And although we understand compatibility, mass, scale, architectural features to a certain extent, I certainly wouldn't call myself an historic expert, by no means. However, this board is here to kind of look at all these cases from different lights and to kind of double check staff's viewpoints, staff's suggestions, or at times an applicant's desire to not listen to staff or other things, in which case things end up here. In this scenario, when I'm looking at the proposed relocation of a house, which is not easy, it's not an easy fact, it's certainly not a painless act, and as an architect, as a licensed architect, and also as a real estate, someone that's in real estate, I just could appreciate the difficulties of trying to relocate a building. It's very difficult to relocate it and then to build around it, to kind of make the vehicular access points work, to make the setbacks work, to make the building separations work, to even fit it into a site that would fit within zoning requirements and building and safety requirements is already at a very high level of difficulty. And so I've always encouraged, and I always thought it was a wonderful idea when you had an applicant and a developer that was willing to do that, that was willing to take that step. And so I appreciate that. And then you got to look at, well, how is it fitting within the site, and how are these new structures surrounding the site, and was this done in a compatible way, and was this done in such a way that would perhaps alter or make the building less significant in a way. When I asked staff earlier on for a survey, which we got, that kind of depict the location of the house, or the way the house is situated and the way the house is surrounded by adjacent buildings and existing buildings, I was kind of thinking the same thing of how's this house currently situated, and although there are bigger setbacks because of the fact that it's a 1910 home and because of the fact that it's been surrounded by development over the years, it's really lost over the decades the so-called farmhouse look. And when I'm kind of looking at an aerial from 1928, you kind of see the house and you see it completely surrounded by existing homes. So even as early as 1928, development had completely occurred around it, albeit it was probably all single-family homes. But at some point, whether it was 1905 or 1910, the farms started going away and they started getting subdivided, and then these homes came in. So as early as 1928, there was development around it, which we assume was with single-family homes, and then at some points in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, it was further developed by other things, which is natural. And so this house currently, the way it's situated, doesn't seem to have the kind of farmhouse presence, at least to me, where it just kind of stands out. It already has pretty much lost most of its east-west visibility, and certainly its south. I also asked staff if the porch was original, and it was not, and so that's actually something that's going away with the proposal.
No. You asked about the rear porch.
The rear porch, correct.
Yeah, the rear porch. Yeah, the front porch is highly important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the rear porch was not.
That's right. I should.
Yeah.
We're on the same page,
Yeah,
but
I just want to make sure.
just for clarity purposes, I asked staff about the rear porch, and the rear porch was an add-on, and in some case over the years, that had occurred at some point, and that's being removed. So I appreciate the difficulty of relocating buildings to save significant buildings. And I also realize that what's there now and the way it's isn't going to change all that much with the surrounding development. And so I don't have fundamental issues with the site planning portion of it, nor the relocation of the building. And I do appreciate staff's in-depth kind of back and forth thought process with us for us to understand of really the procedures. It's very similar to sort of an archaeological item that comes up during grading where everything stops and a paleontologist comes up and reviews everything. So this is no different. The same level of analysis is going to take place with the relocation. Insofar as the development in the rear and the way the mass and scale of it, of two scale, is really not a big issue because most of it is out of the way. And so, you know, really the only part of my analysis that I go into is how that existing building looks along Durham, right next to it. And so, in essence, you know, some comments were made that, you know, it's always a good idea to align roof lines and roof and et cetera. And I guess if that's done on the new building, you would actually raise it a bit, because the way it looks to me, if we're doing that, we would end up with higher ceilings, and then all of a sudden the overhangs would start lining up. And I would support that if it's within the height of the height limit. If that's allowed, it might be a good idea to start kind of looking at that, where you're starting to get some higher ceilings, and at the same time you're starting to line your roof lines up. So I do think that's a good comment that was brought up. I also think that perhaps, you know, at least the windows in the front, which it seems as there's 3 windows or something, should start to match kind of the existing wood windows of the house. So some details should kind of match. I wouldn't go so far as the rest of the windows, because I don't think they're going to be visible. But those were some of my thoughts. I was kind of looking at this, is adding some architectural details to the front to kind of respect the past, not compete with it, but not create so much of a disparity. So with that, I'll kind of leave my comments, and maybe we could hear other board members, and if need be, we could discuss it more.
Mr. Billion?
Sure. So I will keep my comments brief, and I will not repeat the things that Mr. Simonian has said. But I echo his view in terms of referring to city staff in terms of the historic review of the design, since we're not experts in that area. And I would like to actually thank the Historic Society for putting the time and effort and all the good things they do in preserving these jewels. So the first thing I was, maybe you guys noticed throughout my questioning early on, I was focusing on trying to find out if there was a reach from the developer to the Glendale. I mean, this is like the first place you go when you're hit with a historic building. I mean, this is the guys you want to be working with and get their input. Then you wouldn't have such an opposition, and basically they'll help you out. They'll give you guidance on what they're looking for. I mean, that's just a starting point. But to their defense, even though maybe they didn't make the connection, they were listening to you guys. I think you guys recommended not chopping the house and preserving the whole building and not getting rid of the 30%. So they read that in the letter and they did it. They didn't reach out to you guys, but they did it. And as Mr. Simonian mentioned, as a person in development, I understand how difficult it is to make things pencil when you're trying to move and preserve a whole house on a site. And right now you're constrained. You have like so many constraints with setbacks. You have so many constraints when it comes to site plan. I mean, it's not easy to move an existing house and still able to pull a site plan that's somewhat decent. In terms of the comments I've heard, I kind of agree with Mr. Simonian. I was looking, I live close by, so I drive all the time on that street, and even though you see the house, and yes, the setbacks are larger, you don't see the sides of the house. You have the big buildings that surround the project. You really don't see the sides. You kind of see the front, where that's still happening with the current proposal. There were some comments about the scale of the adjacent building that's a little big, and I kind of somewhat agree to it. In this area over here, maybe this is just a little bit overwhelming. But other than that, I mean, I think, like, I'm all for moving the house, and if I'm gonna vote in support, I want that detailed plan to be condition number one, and not to start the move and then, oh, oops, we messed up, now we're back to the 4 new units. We don't want that to happen. So in case during the preparation of that plan we find out that there is even 1% chance that there's something that's going to go wrong, this whole deal should be aborted and redesigned. So that's where my thoughts are.
Thank you. So I think what I'm hearing from you two, you guys are fine with the relocation as they're being proposed, and as staff has agreed that that's not going to impact the historic. Okay. So I concur as far as letting staff deal with the MND or letting them continue and doing their own analysis. I think they're very capable of conducting that survey, assessing the contractors' credibility, their credentials, whatever their license that they're qualified for. What I want to talk about is what I usually talk about in these types of developments, which set aside the historic assessment is more of the site planning. One of the questions that I have for staff, what is the minimum driveway width required for such a project? 90. So I recall we've had numerous different types of projects, and one of our requirements has always been when we're proposing or when we have a project, a driveway going against a building, we always wanted to have some sort of a buffer. We didn't want to have a driveway that is right against the building. And what is being proposed right now, in my opinion, I think there is room for some site improvement to bring the quality of life of the detached structures, open space around, be a little bit more comfortable to live in. I mean, we literally have, as I asked the architect, what is the backup? And literally, he said the backup is the face of the building, which is 24 foot wide. I would have hoped that there would be some open space in front of the bedrooms, but right now the backup for the garage is the face of it. And also the 9 foot wide is right against the proposed building and the proposed new location. So I think the bottleneck that is created and the narrow section, that the 4 foot on the side, and not having any open space on the adjacent, is basically the buildings now is going to be sitting right on the concrete. I think, to me, that needs to have some improvement there. Now, having said that, to me, if the design of the new the structure is trying to mimic or complement the historic structure, I think there is some improvement that needs to happen there. The window detailings, the railings that are being proposed, the plate heights, the pitch height, the roof heights, the gates that are being proposed, which matches the siding. So there's a lot of those types of details that either if you ask me, I would have liked to seen on record. I would have liked to seen a little bit more of a contemporary that would not compete with the historic. It would accentuate. It would celebrate the architecture that is going against that, rather than try to use some of the details, but not successfully. If the eaves and the roof overhangs are trying to match, that they're not. They're exposed rafters on the existing, which in this case they're enclosed rafters and enclosed eaves. So that's more of a commercial look. You have steel railings on the top, which in my opinion, I think that's a little bit of a competing element there with the craftsmen. So I think there's definitely opportunities that if we are going with the craftsman style architecture, then let's try to make this a true craftsman style. So I think a little bit of an improvement. I agree that the windows in the front should not be a metal cladded windows. I think it should be a lot more in keeping with what we're trying to do. But I think in the bigger picture, I think the style of the architecture, if it's being proposed to match, then let it be. Let it not be a shade of craftsman. Let it be either a craftsman or non-craftsman. So I think that's to me, that's the difficult part. There are several big questions in this project. The first question was relocation of the historic building, which we think that we're okay with. The second,
phase one.
At phase one.
Right.
But that's to be continued, which we won't know until all the requirements have been submitted to staff, and they would go through this environment. So as far as approving the MND with allowing staff to continue as part of the requirements, as part of, can we have an MND with conditions?
Well, essentially for an MND, the mitigation measures would be conditions of the project. So if you look at mitigation measures, are actually modifying the project so that there would be no impact. So they are, in essence, a condition.
Okay. So then looking at the site planning, the open space, I guess before and after, according to staff, according to the historic report, it should not impact but according to Historic Society, it does. So there's that conflict, there's that question but we rely on staff, and I believe staff is a capable, and they're a lot more qualified historians than we are sitting here.
What was the point you're just referring to at the moment? I missed it.
The open space around?
Oh, I see. Okay.
The open space. But open space aside, I think the quality of life for that home should not be compromised because of the development, in my opinion. I think the driveway should not be right up to the wall. I think there needs to be some buffer between the driveway backup and the bedroom. So I think there is ways that it can be improved, absolutely. Unfortunately, the front unit will be impacted a bit. Some square footage may be lost. But I think, and as a compromise of a larger, more inviting driveway that does not really shove itself against the historic, it opens up, it gives a better open space around there. It is a historic home. Everybody agrees with that. It's been gone for 2, 3 years, 4 years. So everybody agrees on that. So let's work with that. Let's try to figure out how we can do this. So other than that, I think the amenities that have been provided, it's needed. We can't do without. I still think that I would have looked at it somehow. I would have encouraged staff to look at it, find a way to look at this as a a 3-unit plus an existing house, so that the fourth car or the guest parking shouldn't have been, forced in. That would have allowed them to have a better open space, in my opinion. But that's just me, and I can't and I can't rewrite the zoning or the laws in here, but I can request or encourage staff to look at it.
To
in that
violate the
direction.
code? I kind of think
No,
you should do that.
no, absolutely not. And then, being that it is 4 units, I guess each unit will require 200 square foot of common.
Yes.
So in the back, technically, we have 800 square foot of common outdoor space.
Yes, we want them to provide it for the,
So the front unit will have to use the back area.
correct,
Uh,
it's all one side,
okay.
yeah.
Anything you guys want to add to?
Well, you've raised a very good point. Well, as far as the site plan is concerned, I absolutely agree with you, and it could be accomplished in a very easy way. It's just some modification of the front unit to allow for easier access driveway-wise and easier backup, at least for that front unit.
That will help the massing, I think, as well.
I can kind of diagram what my thoughts are, but I don't know if basically it's if this unit has, if this guest or the 5th parking and this one is pushed back enough that there's maybe a open space in front of this, and the 24 foot is here, so this can be pushed back. The kitchen can be wrapped in here. The powder room can go in the back. So there's ways that they can be fixed without drastically losing the living spaces. And this can be pushed back as this is coming back. This can be back there, and so.
Could you give us a verbal on that? Was that the wall at the driveway? Push that back to create.
So what I was thinking is that if this whole thing is pushed back.
Yeah, I can't see. If you
Oh,
can
I'm
just,
sorry.
You're talking about the wall at the driveway.
So
Yes.
I guess the east wall of the living space,
Right.
if it's pushed forward or moved west, that would allow the access to the driveway, and it'll give a little bit better landscaping buffer between the historic house and the new unit.
And also provide more of a pronounced effect
It would
of
be,
the house.
it- and it would completely, not just 9 foot apart, they would be substantially further apart. And they can landscape that area, and it would basically, the structure will stand on its own. And the 2 garages that are there, if you take the edge of the porch of the historic house, if you draw a line across and come back towards the bedroom 1, that gives you a nice open space. That can be a landscape buffer. It can be some open space that these bedrooms are not really facing the garages, and they can kind of have a better sense of privacy there.
So bedroom 1 or bedroom 2?
I mean, the bedroom 2 and 1, I mean, it can be like a rectangular shape. And so whatever the distance is, the 3 cars can be pushed back.
And then when you were talking about a substantial move for the east facade of the living room of the new house at the front, I know we don't like to mandate numbers, but do you have a sense of that? Oh.
So, I mean, that's just, I'm not saying that's the dimension, that's not the idea, that's not moving. I mean, I'm not saying any of these things, but I'm just suggesting that may
Direction.
that may help. I mean, it can be whatever that needs to happen, but I think that putting the relocation of the home without having any kind of a significant open space around it, I think that's kind of we're going to miss the boat on that one.
I think that will help also. The Glendale Historic Society brought a good point of the structure being too close to it. I think that will open up
Again, going back to my first statement, I'm not looking at this as a historic. I'm looking at it as a structure being moved to the side and being able to. Somebody's going to live in there, and make this bedrooms a little bit more of a living conditions rather than just a driveway next to it.
And not the historic value. I'm just talking about the building overwhelming.
Yes.
The single family.
I mean, again, we can discuss it if you agree, if you're not, or.
Insofar as the style is concerned, you certainly brought up an interesting topic, which is, if the new buildings were more of a modern style of architecture, then the significant historic home, in a sense, would stand out, and it would really come to life. And I really, it's an interesting concept, and so I wanted to kind of get Mr. Platt's kind of opinion on that. Insofar as the proposed units, the 3 proposed units, if they were more of a contemporary style, as opposed to a traditional style.
Yeah, there are two thoughts there. We're always open to contemporary style in the proper setting. This is a very mixed setting, and it would clearly distinguish or differentiate the old house from the new. We've worked on some other projects, some of which haven't come to fruition, where we have looked to build around craftsmen, where we've actually seen designs that are what I'd call contemporary craftsmen. They don't have the pitched roof, they don't necessarily have the porches, but they work with some of the materials, siding, window types to just kind of soften the modernism and help it blend in. On the other point, we've received direction from the board, and then also in our streamlining task force meetings where we looked at previous board approvals. In general, when we're developing things on the site of an existing structure, we've heard that the desire is often to try to keep the look of the new building sympathetic and often in the same style as the historic building. And that's so we have two somewhat conflicting things. Generally, when we work with applicants, we give them these options, and ultimately we work with the option they choose. So.
Which I think it's fine. If they are choosing the style to match or somehow be in keeping with what is there now, I think some of the details should be modified to address some,
get the details to the same level.
Details and bring it to the same level.
And I want to get this board's opinion on this. Our motto has always been to try to solve conflicts at this board. Mm-hmm. So when people come here, it's a public setting, and our intention is always to try to have everyone compromise to the point where they might be a bit uncomfortable, but at least there was a compromise, and it seems as though a good solution was raised. And I'm asking a question, just literally, amongst us boards members, do we think that's an appropriate question to ask, let's say, the Historic Society or even the applicant, if that was done, let's say, and it's a very simple question, don't elaborate on anything else. If the style was changed, what their preference would be to try to come up with an amicable kind of a scenario. What is, your opinion on it?
I rather not, because I don't think we're here to dictate the style. Mm-hmm. I think we're here to review what is in front of us and give opinion of what they have been presented to us. I don't think it's our privy to tell the applicant change their style to a certain style. All we are doing is we're saying that what I'm saying is if they have chosen to go, in my opinion, more in keeping with the existing architecture, then let it be true to its details and all the trimmings and all the eave details and everything.
But what I'm getting at,
I think Mr. Malikan has a good point, but I'm just curious to see what the historic,
Mr. Platt?
Just before, if you're going to open, I just wanted to throw in, working with the applicant, we generally would advise not to go too close to what's there first, because today's builders cannot really pull that off as well as we would hope, A. And so some of the things that we looked at in terms of the windows, we thought it was appropriate to have undivided light windows, to just call these out as something different to have the aluminum clad wood versus the wood. Because we're very happy aluminum clad wood really has the same profiles as wood windows to a large part and is generally a good surrogate. So the boxed eaves, we were accepting the boxed eaves because they're not the open eaves that you have on the house. Of course, we'll take it whichever direction you want, and we'll learn from that. But that's something we try not to go too far. Through our process, this house had many more kind of Victorian-style doodads attached to it in some of the earlier versions that we thought, A, didn't look like the house or real Victorian things. So we've kind of streamlined it and tried to make these background-ish as much as possible.
To me, I appreciate what staff has tried to do, but to me, it brought to the point that it's trying to use the current details, but it's not really getting there because of, I would probably say maybe because of the budget reasons. And I wouldn't have known if that was the direction that was given. So if somebody's trying to build a very similar home to a value structure within a very close proximity on the same lot and is using the same kind of details of the siding and same kind of a framed windows, and I think it's so close that it needs to be the same, almost identical if need be, in my opinion,
or
complete opposite. Or complete opposite. I mean, it can be a. I mean, I hate to say it in public, but it can be just a complete glass box. I mean, so you know.
Which is done in Europe everywhere.
Covered in mirrors, which would enhance the visibility of the historic house.
Yeah, but I'm just saying. I mean, we're just talking right now, but that is the design style that the architect has chosen, and I think it's fine as long as we celebrate some of the details and we'll try to bring that.
And I appreciate the dialogue. Some of my comments were based simply on the fact that I had, during my discussion, had brought up some design features that could be improved on the proposed front unit. Some of the community members had voiced some concerns. You had brought up some concerns. So it seems as though there might be some conditions placed on changing the design anyways, or changing the features, I should say, and the detailing of that front unit. And if that's the case, then I had a more hypothetical kind of a follow-up, which is, do we want to do more of a contemporary thing? So I guess with that, in order to push this case along, because we've been talking for a long time, it seems as though there is certain consensus pretty much on all items. The only part that we've kind of, and I'll follow up with what you mentioned as well, I do support some of the site planning modifications that you're referring to, Mr. Malakian, insofar as, slightly adjusting the width of the driveway to create more relief between the existing and the proposed, and also providing some open space by the rear bedrooms by kind of, again, providing more of a relief and more of a setback and more green space between them, which would be more in line with, how these buildings were built originally, because at times when they were divided in those narrow lots, you would get a 40-foot lot and you get a 30-foot building, and you would only get a 5-foot setback on each side anyways in some of these older buildings. So I think the only question then becomes is just if we should concentrate on some conditions or suggestions as to how to
those levels.
Alter the design, the architectural detailing of the new proposed, or if we should kind of push them to kind of work with staff on more of a contemporary feel.
I think we should give some direction, and I think staff is more than capable of figuring this out.
Agreed. And so in the direction that we're proposing, is it more what's going on the contemporary side, or do we want to kind of...
Either or, as long as they...
So this would be...
Because I have a clear
suggestion.
opinion on that, but I wanted to get your opinion as well.
I think we should give some direction of what we would like to see improved as it's being proposed today, because that's what public has seen. If they choose to go with the contemporary. It's a completely a redesign, and I think at that point, staff should make a decision. I would recommend staff for them to come back to us if it goes to a completely a different style, because this style we've seen, we know, we're going to put some conditions, some recommendations, and I think we can imagine what it's going to look like. What does staff think?
My sense is, I think you're right. The public hasn't seen a contemporary design. We haven't heard from the design team if they were even interested, or the owner, if they're interested in that. We have enough to work on definitely with what we have to impose conditions that we could easily apply. So,
okay.
and
Good deal.
Ultimately, we only bring things back to you when the applicant cannot or refuses to meet the conditions. So it'd be putting it in a kind of a gray area.
Okay. So, do we want to hear, or is that okay, or do we want to?
No, I agree. I don't think it's a good idea to elongate the matter at all.
Okay.
I kind of appreciated the dialogue as well. I thought it was an interesting enough of a case to kind of get at least the board's mindset, and it would also kind of dovetail into future projects as well. Insofar as the conditions are concerned, I think we could very quickly go over what staff has proposed, and if those are good, then we could kind of add to them. I already know that there's several we're going to add to without any issues, and then we could kind of maybe get to the last portion, which is some suggestions, perhaps, whether there are conditions or considerations about the front the details.
So are you going to give us, or you want me to go through the notes?
It might make sense for you to go through your conditions and what you have so far. Yes.
Going back to the beginning, we had the discussion about kind of a contingency plan within the moving report that we receive in case something happens during the move and things fall apart or there's a problem, what we would do. We'll make sure that that's in the moving report. We can write it in as a condition. We had a note or a discussion about windows in general, and it sounded like you were focusing primarily on the front unit, and the idea would be that the windows at the front unit more closely resemble the divided light windows of the front or of the historic house. You indicated you'd prefer that those windows be wood rather than aluminum-clad wood.
I made that comment, and then
it came up somewhere in there.
I think you. I think did I mention it? I thought I did.
Someone.
We both.
We
mentioned it, I
both
think.
mentioned
Both
it. Yeah.
mentioned the windows, I think,
Okay.
remember.
Consistency.
I didn't realize it was aluminum-clad wood.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was just pure aluminum.
Oh, no, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah, we're comfortable with aluminum-clad wood.
I am
being
as well.
close.
So, to me, I don't think that should be a condition unless you, Mr. Malekian, think. Okay. So we strike that.
Okay, so we'll have the windows at the front house, and by that, not just, I assume, the street-facing windows, but the windows wrapping, well, why not just say all the windows at the front unit? Unless you want the south facade, which is
What is proposed on the package at the moment on the top?
1/1, single-pane hung windows.
Does it say the material? On the rest?
Aluminum-clad wood, I believe,
For what?
for the windows on the new buildings.
All of them are aluminum.
Oh, okay, so it would stay as proposed.
Except you did discuss the idea of incorporating divided lights or simulated divided lights to better tie it in with the historic house.
Again, I think after discussion, based on the quality of windows that they're described, it would make sense, especially in light of kind of not trying to get too close to what was existing, then we should kind of keep it as proposed.
Leave it the 1/1,
Right.
okay?
I think there's definitely opportunity for them to look at the front windows if they can. I would like for them to kind of do a study of some true craftsman architecture window styling, not necessarily matching what's there, but they are putting new windows. They can play around with that. There's a lot of different types, and rather than just kind of repeating the same type of a single hung or double hung, maybe you have two side and one larger picture window in the middle, or some different proportions that will give a better style, or some better presence, I guess, a street frontage.
Okay, what we could do at the ground level where we have the common rooms is possibly look at larger openings or picture windows flanked with operable sash. The upper bedroom windows would be more traditional punched
Something
single window or
something
paired
more
windows.
keeping with the style. Yeah.
And then in terms of mutton grids, am I hearing 1/1's okay, or would you like to see some pattern but not necessarily reflecting the
I think
old house?
I think it should complement the window proportions and the window style that they choose, rather than just because we asked for and what's there now. I think divided would be preferable, but if it's not going to work with the style of window they're coming up with.
Well, it could. With these windows, they can order simulated divided lights. We could come up with a pattern, say a 2/1, a 3/1, something that recalls the era without slavishly looking like the house. But,
and we're
we
talking
were
about only the
comfortable
front
with 1/1s.
windows. Only the front facing.
Just at the street?
Just the street and the sides to that would,
anything that's visible from the street. Okay. It seemed there was clear consensus on reducing the size of the northwest unit, the front new unit, to allow for greater landscape buffering between the buildings, to create a buffer alongside the historic house, and then also to adjust the garage location adjacent to that same building so that there's a buffer before the backup distance is met. It's basically pushing that garage back.
Right.
That looks like it's probably easily doable because they have much more private open space than they're required to have, so hopefully there's space there.
And as far as the driveway, even like 1.5 feet, I think would provide enough of a separation where it's not smack next to the porch. Even some relief would help there.
Okay, but not less than that. We had a discussion of several different design tweaks, some of which I think have gained traction and some I haven't heard more about. You mentioned the roof pitch, and that would be Mr. Malikian.
So let me give you some thoughts that I have. There's definitely opportunity to do some sort of a post and beam detailing for the front entry. So some sort of a support, something that like an overhang or some sort of a craftsman detail that can be introduced.
Just to could answer this better, we may have some setback issues. If
You can
posts.
encroach up to 30 inches.
What?
30 inches, yeah, for the roofing.
Roofing, right. So you can definitely have some support coming out to support the roof.
Well, we could have a bracketed roof over the entry door.
Some element there that will support, and they can do a detail in the siding rather than just have, and so forth. They can also look into doing some sort of a post and beam on the top balcony area. I think there's a nice opportunity there to add some detail.
And you're saying you're talking more like a trellis feature?
It can be anything. It can be trellis. It can be just a, maybe, I mean, if they're going to match the details, they can even come up with maybe some sort of a column that matches the. And
Shall we not have a Corinthian column?
Yeah, don't match the Corinthian.
The house has all Corinthian columns.
Well,
I was wondering, are those original? They can't be original.
No,
So
there's
then
there's
the
an. It's
question
not
comes-
common, but that's a feature we see on other houses from the
If
era.
I was a betting man, I would have bet that was put on later.
I would have thought the same thing at one point. So.
I think softening up the front elevation with details is really.
But now
It would definitely help the front elevation.
Okay, and I'm truly a little confused for the balcony that's facing the street.
Okay.
You're talking about some sort of roof structure?
Maybe.
Or
It can be a trellis. It can be just a support. It can be, a kind of a frame beam across, and it just be kind of
a space frame?
not a space frame.
I'm just I don't remember if we talked about this with the applicant, but we thought that reduced the kind of mass kind of at the front next to the.
What I'm trying to do is add details to the front.
Okay.
And if the details is going to impede the overall design and the massing and everything, you be the judge, but I think.
So we can enhance the balcony area.
And definitely not steel flat railing, that it's more of a contemporary effect.
Okay, so we'll enhance the design of the balcony area at the front with appropriate details to the style that will create some visual interest there.
And they can, I don't know, what do you guys think about the exposed rafters that the existing house has versus the enclosed rafters?
Well, after going through our discussion, I think I do believe that staff's comments of doing the box eaves and keeping it a bit simpler as opposed to going down the ornate route is the right way.
Okay.
I'm afraid that if we start mimicking or trying to prescribe too much of those original details, that it's going to look very awkward.
I agree.
Okay, so
I hope that helped.
Very much. We'll strike the boxed eave concept. The railing will change, and then you had also mentioned the gate, which has horizontal siding. We'll change that to kind of. We'll come up with maybe a
simpler,
motif.
much simpler.
We'll have gate
Mr. Platt, you
motif.
said you're going to strike the box eve, but it's already.
I'm sorry. My note was boxed eaves should be open.
Oh, okay.
We're going to keep the boxed eaves. Yeah. The railing. There was mention of roof pitch. Just so you know, we actually asked that the roof pitch be put where it is and reduced to the greatest degree possible, just to drop the height and a little bit of the mass. So we'll strike the roof pitch. We're okay with the proposed style. We're okay with the metal-clad windows. You're in support of the mitigated neg deck. We have good direction for the buffering around the edges. At the driveway and for the historic unit. And I believe that's everything that we have.
One last question, and maybe we should note that the brick that it's going to be replaced or added onto the chimney. I'm assuming that they're going to relocate the existing brick, which is the original brick.
Presumptively, yeah.
So the extension of that existing brick, the joint that it's going to create, or somehow it's going to add on, we need to make sure that it's consistent. It's the same style in the brick. So I don't know if they need to go on Brickyard and have them match and mate.
Yeah, we would do that as a matter of course, but we'll add it as a condition just so it's memorialized.
And the last notation, and it may be a graphic, on the front elevation and the perspectives, it shows that the roof eave runs in front of the brick, whereas the side elevation shows the brick cuts the eave. So I need to make sure that one or the other. So I don't know. I don't have the exact dimension of the brick versus.
That actually could be different because of the new chimney there. Often it goes up through the roof, and there is a section of roof in front of it. We'll look at that more carefully.
Okay.
But I'll put that as a condition.
And lastly, just a recommendation or something, but having a 4'5", you're going to have a very narrow passageway between the property line and the fence line. So that's something that fire department needs to look at as far as access.
Okay. Yeah, we just noted in the photos the brick, the eave is in front of the chimney.
So they'll probably end up having about a 2-foot section between the wall and the brick for them to pass around.
They'll send out the thin fire guys.
I don't have the dimension for it. Right. Or somewhere on there.
Good. So, do we have it all?
I think so.
I think so. Well, it's already 7 o'clock, and we got 2 more cases after this,
Yes.
so.
We have a motion, please.
First,
Well, first we gotta-
the first motion you guys have to do is the adoption of the mitigated neg deck before we can act on the project.
I move to approve the mitigated declaration.
Second that.
Board Member Benlian,
Yes.
Board Member Simonian,
Yes.
Chair Malikian.
Yes.
I move to approve the project with the conditions that's stated.
I second that motion.
Board Member Benlian,
Yes.
Board Member Simonian,
Yes.
Chair Malikian.
Yes.
Thank you.
Do we have anywhere to sign, or?
Yes.
Do we need?
Thank you,
time
everyone,
to-
for coming.
Do we need time to
Thank you.
break?
Maybe a
Are we
quick
ready?
recess and I can grab.
Okay, we're gonna take a 3-minute recess.
Mr. Chairman, we're ready to go when you're ready.
Okay, we're on, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Oh, good.
Oh, I'm sorry. No one. Okay, yes, we're ready. Sorry.
So the next case we have before us is located at 1933 Glenwood Road.
Should I start my presentation, Mr. Chairman?
I think you need your mic on as well.
I think it is on.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Good evening, Design Review Board members. The case before you is a design review case number PDR 1702683 for the property located at 1933 Glenwood Road. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing one-story 892 square foot single-family residence built in 1922 and to construct a new 1,474 square foot two-story single-family residence with an attached two-car garage on a 5,000 square foot interior lot located at R1 zone, floor area ratio district 1. In terms of site planning, the proposed house will alter the site planning of the existing house to be more consistent with the neighborhood concept. The house will set back 31 feet and 3 inches from the front property line, which is consistent with the adjacent properties and within the neighborhood average of 31-foot front setback. The existing attached one-car garage with access from Glenwood Road will be demolished, and the new attached two-car garage will be located towards the rear of the lot with the access from the alley. The new garage is consistent with the surrounding neighborhood since the majority of the homes have garages facing the alley at the rear. New landscape consists of drought-tolerant plants and trees complement the overall design. There is no proposed change to the existing 6-foot block wall along the east property line, and new block walls are proposed on the west and north side of the house along property lines. However, a condition of approval is recommended to apply stucco finish on these walls to have an appropriate finish to match the proposed house, and also to have a split-face block facing the neighboring properties. In terms of mass and scale, staff believes the overall scale and proportion of the proposed two-story house, including the second floor setbacks and articulation at the elevation, are appropriate to the site and neighboring properties. While the majority of houses in the neighborhood are one-story, breaking the two-story volume into several volumes and minimizing the second floor size make the appearance consistent with the surrounding one-story houses. And there is a proposed front porch facing Glenwood Road, which helps to reduce the mass and boxy design at the front facade as well. The roof configuration, which is combination of hipped roof, are appropriate to the overall context and design. The overall height of the house will be 25 feet, and 28 feet is the maximum height which is allowed in the zone. In terms of design and details, staff believes that the proposed architectural details and material, including smooth stucco finish, stone veneer, boxed eaves, primary door, and overall material texture and colors, are consistent with the architectural concept of the proposed house and neighboring properties. Staff recommends condition of approval to provide details of railing and roof vent to be consistent with the overall design. The front entrance and front porch are well integrated into the overall design. However, a condition of approval is recommended to provide a more architectural interest by revising the design of the post and beam at the front porch. The windows, the fenestration includes sliding and fixed fiberglass windows with wood sills and stucco foam surrounds. The material and type of the windows are appropriate to the style of the house. A condition of approval is recommended to change the proposed material, which is foam stucco, for window surrounds and also for the roof fascia to synthetic wood trim or a material similar to that. The roof of the house and garage will feature asphalt shingle, which are consistent with the overall design. Staff is recommending approval of this design proposal with the condition that I mentioned, and this concludes my presentation. I'm available for your questions.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any questions for staff?
Is the existing hedge along the property line as depicted in this picture, is that staying?
It is staying.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can we pull up the street view, please?
Okay, we only have one card. Is it Levon Halulian?
Hi everyone, my name is Levon Halulian. I'm designer of this building. We're starting this one as a remodeling. Later on we cannot do remodeling because this lot is too small and also there are a lot of problems. Finally we came to demolish everything and rebuild and redesign. A few times I met with staff and we back and forth, and we come to this design and we're not bothering no one. No one is blocking view and not seeing in other person's backyard. And also, as Eileen mentioned, our front setback is more than 25 feet, and also our garage is behind from alley. And landscaping is enough, more than enough, which one is required, City of Glendale. And all these conditions, which one should all members. I agree. If you have any question, I can answer you.
Do we have any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do have some questions.
So how far is the second floor setback from the first floor?
I don't remember exactly, but it's 12 plus 15, I think 27, from first floor to second floor.
27. 27 to the patio.
Yeah,
to the edge of the
back because, I designed, as mentioned, she's mentioned, because left side is one story, right side 2-story building, because I make a back, I don't want, in the front I have a 2-story and not matching left side buildings, which one we have it. All is 1-story buildings.
The neighbor to the right
Yes,
is 2-story.
right or 2-story, left. That's why I make in the back. And also we cannot make more than 1,500 square feet. I count 1,470, I think, 70 square feet, like that. That's it.
Actually, I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
So you're not going to be demolishing the east face of the building, right? That's gonna,
No, totally we have to demolish everything.
So everything.
Everything has to go.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I interrupt you. There is in a color it says existing house, 100% has to be demolished. I think in the first A1 I have it.
Okay. The landscape plan that I'm looking at right now, the square footage that it's calling out, which is 41.5%, and your calculations on the page, it's 44.5%. The question that I have is that the landscape plan, it seems like on the east face, it calls out planter, but you have steps and walkways.
Yes.
But I'm not certain which is the correct one. Your call out 44.5, or
maybe I make a mistake, but
41.5.
last one which I calculate, it becomes 44.
Excuse me, Chairman. I verified the calculation for the landscape, and it is 45%.
45%.
Yes,
my calculation.
Because I noticed that inconsistency and asked him to verify, and also I do the scaling.
I think I forgot to erase that first option.
you're also proposing to, on your site plan, it says existing to be removed the driveway on the front?
Yes, correct.
So part of that driveway right now, it bleeds over to the neighbors.
No, neighbor, there.
That's how the survey is showing.
Can I come show to you something?
If you can.
Can I go there?
It's right there, right there. You don't need to go. You can't speak. I'm sorry. If you need to speak in the mic because everybody. Can you turn a little bit? No, the other way. Okay. So, the property line is where the car is standing, right?
Yes, there is a line. You can see it line. Little bit left, little bit. Left, more.
Right there, right?
That's property line.
Okay, so that's the property line.
Yeah, correct.
So, but you're saying that you're removing in your site plan. Is it something that you're removing, or you're planning to keep, or is there going to be a gate there that somebody?
No, it's not going to be gate. Not going to be gate.
Because if you take that out, I don't know how this person is going to access. I'm not.
It's our property.
Okay. Well, I'll let that. That's going to be something that Public Works needs to address.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So the public section is closed. Simonian?
Yeah, it's a modest size development. It's a small lot, so I understand the reason for going to the second level. Normally, we don't encourage going to the second level in neighborhoods where it's mostly one-story home, but the person right next to you is a two-story, so I don't have an issue with that. Plus, the second story is set back, I believe, 58 feet from the property line, which is not going to have much of an impact on the street or the neighbors. So overall, I don't think I have any issues with it. I'm in support. There are a couple minor items, design items. I think the front second floor, there's that portion that kind of like pops out, just creates some kind of funny condition. So we need to look at that portion, and other than that, maybe also look at the railing down below. And that's about it. I think it's a straightforward one.
I agree with Mr. Bellion. Overall, I do not have any issues as well with the site planning or the second floor and the mass, etc. My only comment would be that in this area, that you maybe continue some sort of a roof and kind of wrap around this pop out. And in a sense, it will reduce this mass. And I think that would kind of help out the building because it does look a bit awkward there. And we don't have a material board. Maybe staff has it. Oh, I see it here. But insofar as the railings, I agree with Mr. Bellion that maybe something, it would be nice for them to provide some details there.
Thank you. Simonian?
Mr. Simonian, I missed that last wrapping details where?
So,
on the
wrapping the roof
south
at the side.
elevation?
that's right.
I thought I heard, you were reiterating. I thought there was a second idea there.
The second idea was just to get some more details on the railings around the
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you. I as well am fine with the project. As I suggested or mentioned, I think the applicant should contact the Public Works to deal with the driveway. I know it's an existing driveway, it's in your side of your property, but narrowing that up may become an issue. So that should be taken care of by them. The other item that I've noticed, on your sections, the applicant is calling two different elevation heights. So I think either one of them is fine. 25 is the limit, but there's one that he's calling out at 24.5 feet, so 6 inches below. So let the plans be consistent, so at least everybody knows. Lastly, as far as the front porch, that's the only thing that I would suggest. I think the slenderness of the columns and the beam that is being placed, the amount of roof that is coming there, I think it needs a little bit of a detailing there. So maybe that little bit of a meat and the columns, maybe this kind of a heftier columns, not that slender. You know, the 4x4, you know, a little bit more proportioned with the house itself. Everything else is stuccoed and boxed, so you know you may want to consider bringing a pedestal, wrapping the stone, just a detail. But I'll leave that up to staff and the applicant. They can go ahead and it's a consideration. So other than that, I think we're good. So can we hear?
I can make a motion.
Motion, please.
To approve with the stated conditions.
Real quick, well, Mr. Bentley, you mentioned you weren't fond of the second floor pop-out. Does the wrapping of the roof around that help there?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a condition to redesign the railing at the front porch to provide more detail. Another to wrap the roof around the stairwell pop-out.
Which is the same comment as Mr. Bellion's.
Yeah. And there is a condition to make sure that narrowing the driveway is feasible and Public Works is agreeable to it. We're going to clarify the elevation drawings to show the accurate height. And then at the front porch, we're going to provide heavier columns to give it a little more visible support for the roof above. And then we'll add a consideration along that'll kind of tie into the railing redesign to consider kind of stone pedestals at the base of the porch columns. Is that right?
It's a consideration.
Okay. That's
Okay.
everything.
I move to approve with conditions as stated.
Second that motion.
This is a roll call. Mr. Benlian,
Yes.
Mr. Simonian,
Yes?
Chairman Malikian.
Yes.
The motion passes. Thank you.
And are we ready for the next?
Oh, okay. We made Milka wait till 7:30. Thank you very much. Ouch.
And because of that, I'm going to be the quickest.
Sounds like a plan.
It's a
Okay,
race.
so
Motion to approve.
yes, right. 1519 West Kenneth Road, case number 1707452. The project proposal is an exterior and interior remodel and construction of a 1,072 square foot addition to the front of the existing one-story, 1,008 square foot single-family house, constructed in 1926, and they currently have a permit to construct a 643 square foot detached garage at the rear of the lot, and the lot size is 7,780 square feet. The remodel basically will be essentially just at the addition, will be at the front of the house. That's where the addition will take place. They are proposing to match the existing style of the house that's currently there. So the steep 7 and 12 roof pitch with the long ridge, all those character defining features of the house now will basically be replicated. New fiberglass windows, off-white colors, doors throughout, new asphalt shingles for the addition to match the same charcoal color, new stucco finish, color, texture on the addition will match the existing house, new wood shutters at the front, and new brick veneer at the base, and underneath the bay window and chimney. And finally, staff is recommending approval with conditions, and the conditions in the staff report basically are 3: to identify the downspouts and gutters to be depicted on the elevation drawings, the appropriate designated trash area be identified on the site plan, and to submit a window detail to show the window to be recessed within the opening and the wood sill underneath. And the last thing I just wanted to highlight, which is the main modification, would be to the site planning compared to what's out there now. Right now there's a pretty deep setback of approximately 50 feet or so. They are proposing to obviously bring it forward approximately 25 feet from the front property line, which is consistent with the zoning code. More or less similar to the house to the west, not exactly, but closer. Obviously much more forward than the house to the right, the stone house. But if you reviewed the, which I'm sure you did, the neighborhood survey, you'll see that there are other homes that have similar setbacks in the area. So with that, staff did not believe it's incompatible in the whole scheme of things. I'll conclude my, yes.
It's not compatible?
That it's not incompatible. And with that, I'll conclude my remarks. If you have any questions, I'm available, and I will distribute the material board and the photos.
Thank you. So I have only one card, which is Nari Kudadadi. And as a disclaimer, and it's been brought up to my attention that I have to now, and all of us, we need to disclose. Mr. Kudadadi used to work with my company, Mitigation Associates, I would say about 12 years ago, 11, 12, a little over 12 years ago. So as a disclaimer, so I want to bring that up. And so that will not make any issues for me to make a decision on this. So I want it publicly to be known and everybody to be at notice. So having said that, Mr. Khodadadi, can you?
Sure. My name is Nara Khodadadi. I'm the applicant designer of the project. I've read the conditions and we're okay as far as providing window detail and calling out downspouts and gutters. The trash enclosure, it's in the back. There's an alley in the back, and trash gets picked up. So there is a fence in the back, which that's the location of the trash bins. Any more questions? I'll be here.
I do have a couple of questions, but I will let my colleagues first ask their questions. Go ahead.
I'm good.
You're good?
I have no questions either.
Okay. Actually, I have 3 questions. First, the allowable, I'm trying to find the floor area, which is allowed as 3,100. You're proposing 2,223, correct?
Correct.
As part of that, are you including the additional square footage for the garage in that?
We are, yeah. Anything over 500.
500 square feet.
500.
So, okay, that's my first question. The second question is, looking at the map, and I couldn't see a survey. It seems like there's no survey provided. It seems like proportionally you're adding about the same depth as the back to the front. But when we're looking at it in the map, it just seems that that's... So the question is, have you gotten a survey?
We have a survey.
You have a survey. So what the location of the building is based on the actual survey.
Exactly.
Okay. And the last question is, and that's more for staff. I've looked at the demo calculations and I think we're okay, but I think there's a little bit of an extra wall, the numbers that have been removed, so I think I would encourage staff to look at that a little bit.
We'll look at that. I think based on the numbers, they seem to have a pretty
The numbers are
good
okay, but I
cushion.
think when you count the walls, the amount of walls that is being removed, so there's a little bit of because I think, but it's still under.
We'll revisit it.
It's still under the 50%
Right.
threshold. Right. Okay, I think that's it. That's all I have. So, okay, thank you. So, Mr. Simonian?
Well, with all the elongated discussions of the first project, I think the last 2 are relatively simple. I don't have any major concerns. I think it's a humble addition insofar as the design is concerned and the layout and the mass, etc. And of course, staff's conditions I think are good as well, so I would support the project with staff's conditions.
I will add my voice to Mr. Simonian. I think it's a humble addition, and I appreciate the fact that the design kind of is consistent with the original design and consistent with the neighborhood. And that setback doesn't bother me since other houses have it. And I mean, the other option is to go to the second floor, which we try to avoid. So I'm okay with the setback, and I think 31 feet, it's still decent enough not to raise any issues. In terms of the design, I think it's done tastefully, and I don't have any comments, and I agree with staff conditions. So I'm in support of the project.
All right. Can we have a motion?
I move to approve the project with staff's 3 conditions.
I second that motion.
Okay, motion by Board Member Simonian and second by Board Member Benlian. Approve with the 3 conditions in the staff report. Board Member Simonian.
Yes.
Board Member Benlian.
Yes.
Chairperson Malikian.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we have 2 minutes, so to speak, for tonight, but I've noticed on one of them that Board Member Charchian was on it, Mr. Simonian was not. Did you want to continue that one until we have a full board for everyone to be able to vote on it?
I think there's nothing detrimental in that, so I would prefer to continue that for the next hearing.
Mr. Benlian, you can...
That's okay.
Okay, and then the other one, that was for the June 8th meeting, and the other set of minutes we have is for the May 25th meeting.
The May 25th meeting,
The 3 of us were here, so I can move to approve the minutes.
I'll second it. Is there a count, I guess?
Let's do, can I get a motion for June 8th and a second? I mean, we may not be able to do that because...
What? No, not June 8th, but
June 8th
May
was
25th.
We're going to continue June 8th?
Yeah, June 8th would continue,
Okay,
May
that's fine.
25th. We all agree.
Okay, so quick roll call on the minutes for the 25th. Mr. Bentley?
Yes.
Mr. Simonian?
Yes.
Chairman Malikian?
Yes.
I have a question. Should we hold on to the Acacia
Yes,
package?
please hold on to the packet for the Acacia project.
Okay.
Okay.
Everyone, please hang on to your packets. for that.
Also, our next hearing would be the 27th, correct?
Correct.
I will be out of the country, so I will not be in town.
I'm glad you brought that up. I'm in the same boat.
So that is something that I just realized that because the next hearing is on August 10th.
Everyone's back for, that's the date we...
I will be back August 7th.
So we'll let everyone know
Yes.
that we're down 2 commissioner board members for
August,
27th.
July 27th would have to be
Noted.
continued or...
I might be a maybe on that 10th, which I'm not sure about. Is it the 10th?
And if it is a
August
maybe,
10th.
We have
then
an issue.
we would have an issue.
We need to have quorum for that. We just continued that to a date certain.
Which one?
The Acacia item.
Uh,
The Acacia item was continued, and Mr. Malikian has to recuse himself on that. And because we're down a commissioner,
This is for the 27th?
for the
The
10th,
10th.
August
The
10th.
Oh, I'm a maybe, so I don't know. Do we want to play it safe? I won't know for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and we just continued to a date certain. We'd have to continue that again then, so.
So if that day comes, we would continue it again to a date. So
Unfortunately.
we would have to continue it until we have a
Or
quorum.
get it up, board member.
So do your best.
Yeah, I won't know for several weeks. I know that for a fact.
Can I get a motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
Adjourn?